On the year 1521, the Spanish conquered the Aztec Empire, which was one of the biggest empires and civilizations in history. Um, the the empire was known for being made of warriors, and so it's surprised that they ended up losing and being conquered. But it was so. This presentation is about the combination of factors that led the Spanish to victory. Um, so the relevant people in this, when when the Spanish first arrived at Tenochtitlan, it was Moctezuma, the emperor at that time. He was the one that welcomed Hernán Cortés, and who was the eventual conquistador. When they first arrived to Tenochtitlan, the capital of the empire, they Moctezuma received them with gifts and tried to appease them. He was trying to keep the peace in an effort to make them leave because he knew their intentions, but they were in vain because, and also backfire because it was these gifts that convinced the Spanish that um, the land the lands had like resources when they didn't have that many actually. Um, Eventually, the Hernán Cortés captured Moctezuma and held him captive, and then the Spanish started to do violent actions against the Spanish, who started to grow tired of them and wanted them to leave. So they started to rebel against the Spanish. So Cortés sent Moctezuma to talk to his people, and because Cortés was trying to get control over them through Moctezuma, so he sent him to talk to them and try to calm them down, appease them, but that didn't work. They were so fed up with the Spanish and were upset because Moctezuma wasn't doing actually much. That they threw the Aztec threw stones at him and attacked him. He ended up dying a few days later, most likely from his injuries, though it's not 100% confirmed, but most likely he died from his injuries. Then the first main factor that contributed to the defeat of the Aztecs was the smallpox epidemic. The Spanish brought the smallpox with them from Spain to the empire, and it caused an epidemic that killed around 8 million people. And the ones that were like, well, we're sick too, they were it weakened them, their army. And this happened because it was an unknown disease for the Aztecs, and their bodies didn't have the natural immunity to fight the disease, unlike the Spanish. Even Cuitlahuac, who was brother and succeeded Moctezuma, died from smallpox. After only 80 days, he didn't last that long in power. So yeah, it weakened them a lot. Even their leader died of this disease. Another great factor that caused the fall was that the Aztecs had many enemies. They were conquerors and were in constant conflict with other tribes. They would get into fights with them, and um, and capture their enemies from other tribes and use them as human sacrifices to appease their gods, which of course the other tribes didn't like them. These tribes ended up joining Cortés in the conquest. The most relevant allies the Cortés and the Spanish had were the Tlaxcalans and the Totonacs. The Tlaxcalan warriors led the Spanish stay in their lands after they ended up being expelled from Tenochtitlan because after killing Moctezuma they continued to rebel against them and ended up kicking them out, and it was called the La Noche Triste, where they killed a lot of Spanish people and they ran away. They ran to Tlaxcala and there they planned their next move. They recovered and planned their next move, their next attack. And that next attack was successful because besides of the weakened army of the Aztec, the Spanish also had the advantage of possess better weapons. They had swords and firearms, while the Aztec relied on obsidian blades, spears, and bows. Also, they had steel armors, which the weapons of the Aztec couldn't touch. It was also they also possessed ships, which they used in the attack, and it was also a surprise attack. They took him by surprise and they didn't have a chance. During their attack, the Spanish used their ships to attack Tenochtitlan. The Spanish used the ships to take over Texcoco Lake and cut off the Aztec food and water supply, and starving them. So that weakened the army even more. The siege of Tenochtitlan lasted 93 days, and eventually, with their allies, the Spanish defeated the Aztec forces. The fall of Tenochtitlan marked an turning point in the story of the Americas because it ensured Spain's dominance in Mesoamerica. The fall of Tenochtitlan marked the start of the Spanish colonization. The destroyed Tenochtitlan was now named the New Spain, and Mexico City was built on top of the ruins of Tenochtitlan. Hernán Cortés ended up being in charge of this New Spain, and yeah, that's another story. It was because of all these factors that the Spanish were successful in this conquest.